So the Boston Celtics have just been recently eliminated from the NBA playoffs, and now they're looking onto the summer. And right after they were eliminated, a sort of big move happened with them announcing that Danny Ainge would be re-signing as the general manager, and Brad Stevens would not be their coach anymore, but he would be taking Danny Ainge's spot as the general manager. So now the Celtics have to look onto their future and their offseason this year. So in today's video, I'll be naming some things that I believe the Boston Celtics should do this offseason. But before we get into the video, I'd ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content, and to help me reach my goal of 1,500 subscribers, and comment on this video, start a conversation with me, as I actually do respond to all of my comments. And play that intro. The first and most important thing I think the Boston Celtics need to do this offseason is just get some more depth on this roster. Because in my opinion, that's probably their biggest weakness. Because this is a roster that legitimately has and plays guys like Semi Ojeleye, Grant Williams, and Romeo Langford quality minutes. And if you want to be a great team, that simply won't cut it. But I won't lie, Romeo Langford was kind of balling in the playoffs a little bit, but still. It's very clear that Boston is a very top-heavy team, with their best players being guys like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kemba Walker, Evan Fournier, who might leave this offseason, Marcus Smart, and Robert Williams. But after those guys, the talent difference takes a huge drop-off, and it's very significant. And I think they need to look into the free agency market and look into getting some more guys with actual talent and guys who could help their depth. Get some guys who could actually score the ball, and get some guys who could defend, because their depth is truly horrible and it might be some of the worst in the league. It's definitely one of the worst out of the teams that are in the playoffs. Some guys I think they should look into is, first of all, maybe re-signing Evan Fournier, because he is a pretty solid player and he was a solid shot creator for them. They should also look into getting Tim Hardaway Jr. from the Dallas Mavericks. I think he would fit pretty well on this roster, and maybe they could get Kelly Oubre, who's a good defender, and he's a guy who you would hope could space the floor. Maybe they could look into getting Will Barton, who's a solid scorer, and he can even dish the ball out at a good level. Maybe they could look into bringing back Kelly Olynyk from the Celtics, because in his stint with the Rockets, he was playing amazing, and the Celtics don't really have a big man who could space the floor at all, and adding Kelly Olynyk could possibly help them out in that aspect. Maybe they should look into a guy like Norman Powell, who was a near 20 points per game scorer this season, and he did it on crazy efficiency, and he did a lot of his scoring off the ball. Or maybe they should get Montrezl Harrell to be another option on offense, or maybe even Derrick Rose, who's coming off a great year with the New York Knicks, or maybe even Doug McDermott, who was one of the better shooters in the whole NBA this season, so we could add more floor space into this team, which is something they kind of need. But nonetheless, this Boston team definitely needs some more guys who could just put the ball in the basket, because outside of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who are the only guys on the roster, outside of those two, no one else can really score the ball at a consistent level, creating their own shot, and no one else can be really crazy efficient. Because Kemba Walker can create his own shot, but he's so inefficient that I wouldn't even consider him a plus on offense or an elite offensive player. But this offseason, Boston should definitely look into getting some depth, and if they don't have the money for it, they need to make some trades, because this roster currently constructed cannot stay the exact same, bro. It just can't. The second thing I think the Boston Celtics should do this offseason is something that I brought up at the beginning of this video, and it's the fact that at this current moment, the Boston Celtics don't have a head coach, since their former coach and Brad Stevens is now the general manager. And if we're being honest, Brad Stevens was probably one of the 8 best coaches in the league, so losing him as a coach is far from great. But nonetheless, in the past, they need to focus on getting a good head coach now, because if they could potentially get a good head coach, I think it could amazingly help them. Because if we look at them, they're not a crazy talented team, but they're definitely far from a bad roster. Because when we look at the Knicks, They're not a crazy talented team either, but they were the 4th seed in the conference simply because of Tom Thibodeau's amazing coaching, along with some other players stepping up. But nonetheless, I think getting a great coach like that could turn Boston from an average team, which is what they are right now, to being a great team like they were just a few years ago. Because you have to realize, even though Boston did struggle with injuries a bit this year, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown both had the best years of their career by a significant margin, and Boston still had the worst season in the last 5 years. So I think they need to take a good look into the head coach position. Some coaches they could look into is Kenny Atkinson. I think he's a pretty good coach, but I think he's a little bit better at developing talent rather than a veteran squad. But at the same time, Boston does have a lot of young players, so maybe he would be a good fit. I think that he's actually the best fit for this team, if I'm being honest. There's also Brett Brown, who in my opinion was a flawed coach, but he wasn't above average coach. I think there's a chance he could turn this team around. The only problem with him was the fact that he didn't seem like he likes to get on his players if they were playing bad or things like that. I think that's something that this Boston team needs. There's also Dave Yeager, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He was a pretty good coach for Sacramento, and he almost brought them all the way to the playoffs to the surprise of everyone. I don't really know why he was fired. I think it was because he got in like an argument with Buddy Hield or something, but he got fired for a dumb reason. That's why Sacramento still sucks. But anyways, I think he's a pretty good coach. I think the Boston Celtics should definitely look at him. Or there's another route Boston could take, which is where maybe they look at a college coach or assistant coach in the NBA or something like that. And I actually do trust Brad Stevens to pick up a good coach, since he's a pretty good coach himself. And I think I could see him making the right decision. I would actually trust him more than I would most other GMs in the league. So Boston really needs to select the right coach this offseason, because I think it will be very important for their future. The third thing I think the Boston Celtics need to do this offseason is something a lot of Celtics fans would agree with me, and that is that they should trade Kemba Walker. And yes, I'm aware of how much money he's making, and I'm aware that it will be very hard for them to remove him from the roster. But I honestly feel like this team will just be better without him on the team, because they still have some solid guards like Marcus Smart or Peyton Pritchard, who are players who I think could do a solid job starting on this team. They might not be as talented as Kemba Walker, but I think they might just be a better fit, because I feel like those guys are better passers. And although they might not be better scorers, Kemba Walker's not even efficient when he's scoring, so it doesn't even matter that much. And he takes quite a lot of shots and misses quite a lot of shots as well. And I'd rather just those shots go to guys like Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, or maybe even Evan Fournier, or whoever else like perimeter scorer they get. And obviously trading a massive contract like that won't be easy, but a team like the OKC Thunder taking on his contract, or the Detroit Pistons taking on his contract, or just any trash roster in the league definitely could happen if you offer them like a young player or a future first round pick. They would take that deal. And I honestly think this team would be better without Kemba, so I think there's a chance that Boston should at least consider and attempt to get rid of him, get him off the team. Bye. If they don't move him, it's pretty understandable, since I do know that it's very hard for him to get rid of him, but I think they should definitely look into moving him this offseason. I think it would drastically help their team. But to conclude the video, I think Boston, with a change of management as well as a change of a coach, can be better next season. I believe Brad Stevens will be more willing to make moves, and I feel like as a coach he'll be way smarter and know what type of pieces fit. He won't just go for names kind of like Danny Ainge would do, and I have faith in him to make the right moves this offseason. So I think it's going to be a very important offseason. It might be the Celtics' most important offseason in the last 5 years, if we're being honest. I think it will either be an absolutely great offseason, people will be like, Celtics were huge winners and all of that, or it will be an absolute terrible one and people are gonna be like, what were the Celtics doing? They're trash. But if I had to give my opinion, I think it will lean more in the direction of a good offseason for them. But at the end of the day, we'll just have to see. But anyways guys, that's it for the video. Let me know what moves you think Boston should do this offseason. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content, and help us with my goal of 1,500 subscribers. Comment on this video, start a conversation with me, as I actually do respond to all of my comments. And I'm out.